So what a great turnout today. What a great amount of energy in the room. I'm very excited to be with you today, this morning. Thanks very much. And so, jumping right in, everyone here is joining this conference to understand better the impact that blockchain technology and more generally digital technologies will have on the world. So let me ask you, are we at the beginning of a digital turning point?
Well, first, Ken, thank you very much. And the answer, yes, we are. But the answer as well is yes, we have been at various digital turning points in the last 20 years. In my own career, I have witnessed three of major things that everybody felt this is going to be the next big thing. And if you look at it even from a French point of view, just to pay tribute to, there was an even fourth one, because long time ago, in the 80s, there was internet before the internet in France with something called the Minitel. And when we were working in that, we had the impression this is going to be the next big thing. So there was the internet, and we all felt this is the big thing. And there were a lot of skepticals. Mobility. I worked in one of the largest telecom groups, and when mobile started, when mobility that really transformed and was a turning point, a digital turning point, there were a lot of skepticals. And then social networkings really transformed a lot. And now, yes, I do believe that we are, at the dawn of something that will change fundamentally a lot of what we do and the entire ecosystem, which is a decentralized, a distributed way of doing things. If we look, the previous speaker said a lot, maybe here in this room, don't know what blockchain is, but if we look at the Gartner curve of any adoption of technology, you will see that there is always this phase of hype. Today, you talk to a VC fund manager, you talk to investors about, you have some buzzwords, you use them, and you have wide open ears. Use AI, use blockchain, use, of course, big data. And for a valid reason, but there is a hype, independently of the existing of solid use cases, bulletproof economy that existed. So in Gartner, you have this hype phase, then you have skepticism or disillusion, because we hear a lot about it, what we don't see, so the naturally skeptical people will say, but is it happening or not? Then we start turning the point to what is called the positive enlightenment, where you see things happening, and then it becomes part. This is, let's call it the production model. For blockchain, I think we are at this curve where we had this hype about the distributed model. We had some disillusion because a lot of people started to see, but we don't see any really use case. And now, and we have heard some, we ourselves, in partnership with Smart Dubai, we have some use cases that are coming. Her Excellency, Dr. Aisha, mentioned that there are several use cases that the city is working on. You yourself, we're going to talk about it. You have some tangible examples that are getting us on that curve that I call the positive enlightenment, and that made me feel very optimistic about this technology. So yes, we are at the dawn of something that will be a turning point, at the dawn of something that will be the next big thing.
Great. And so what I find very interesting is that many parts of the world, many governments are looking at Dubai and the UAE as a potential template for how smart cities will start to exist and how technology is going to change people's lives. ConsenSys is supporting the European Commission, for example, thinking through the impact of blockchain technology on society. So tell me, what will future look like?
Oh my God, I didn't bring my crystal ball. Usually I work better with this crystal ball. Listen, you mentioned, for instance, an important thing, the smart city. And what a concept. And I'm sure you take 5 people, you ask them what they understand in a smart city, you'll get 7 different answers. But you are right in saying, in Dubai, the model is probably one of the most comprehensive and the most evolved in this construction. And let me, I want you to bear with me on what I call this construction that we are seeing. I mean, you just have to imagine that everything around us will become sensing. From, of course, the phone we are all carrying, our watch, clothes, probably things embedded in our body, to the lamppost, the car, the door of the building, the elevator, the window, etc. So everything that we touch have the potential of becoming sensing. On top of that, everything will become connected. And here you have, and the everything sensing, the IoT technology, machine to machine, etc. Everything connected. Here you have the hype around 5G, everything. And then by this everything connected as well, blockchain, because you have as well the a platform that will allow this distribution of where you put things and where things are happening. Add some data analytics, everything will become smart. Add some artificial intelligence, everything will become smart. And that entire ecosystem is actually the construction on which you can plug all what is happening and all these hype and buzzwords that we are seeing. But that's not enough. What we saw as well from the 2 previous, the panel and our speaker, is there is a lot to be done in a new component in the conversation. We had for years, when I started in a telecom company, one of these largest, the entire thing, conversation was about what technology can make possible. Then, more and more with opening to competition, with more sophisticated business model, the conversation was between what technology makes possible and what economy says viable. We needed to have a viable business case. We needed to have a return on a financial, on economic equation. More and more, with the spread of what we are seeing, with the impact that it has on people's life, individuals, groups, families, small, medium enterprises, large businesses, governments, nations, a third important component in the conversation is happening, that is the societal one. And we have seen from our guest speaker, and the Chief Decentralization Officer in HTC, and I loved, by the way, I loved the label, that there are aspects related to how societies are going to protect or preserve fundamental values, privacy, digital identity. There are fundamental questions that need to be addressed. So how the future would look like? The future will look different, but I believe that nobody has the right answer. At best, I hope that we will have the right questions in order to start having the conversations, to start to look at the future. Nevertheless, you have to make an act of faith. And this is the beautiful thing that you see, for instance, when you mention the Dubai construction and the way it is happening. You draw a line for this future, however long you have a vision for, for the centennial of the country, 2071. Is this a precise view of every deed? Of course not. Of course not. But you need to have an ambition. And the most important thing is this conversation. You know what's something that I find really not highlighted enough? The brilliant thing. In this country, you have a Minister of Artificial Intelligence. Wow, how unique that is. But what I find really brilliant is not only this, is the fact that at the same time, you have a minister of the nomination of a Minister of Artificial Intelligence, you have a Minister of Tolerance, a Minister of Happiness, and the appointment of a 21-year-old Minister of Youth. That is really an illustration of this conversation that needs to happen between technology, economy, and societal on the other hand. We have a reminder, and by the way, and a theme dear to the heart of Dr. Aisha, the ambition is not only to have the smartest city in the world, it's the smartest and happiest city in the world. And I think this in itself is a great optimism in the way that things are moving forward here where we are.
I totally agree with you. This morning we've talked about decentralization as a big theme. So how does decentralization come into play in that future that you are painting? And if you also want to comment on how your company is contributing to building that decentralized future as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's, even if you look at the architecture, IT, from an IT point of view, we lived this era of large mainframes. Then we lived this era where everything was started to become decentralized when we moved to the desktop. Then we moved to the era where somehow it became centralized but virtually when we moved to the cloud. Now the interesting thing is when we move not only to decentralization, because I think that's a process that has started, but for real distributed place where things are happening. In the blockchain where you have a distributed way to authenticate, store, work then on amend or whatever, any type of data, that is a totally different approach to the ecosystem as we know it. If you push it to the extreme, one can say, but if then it's a decentralized, it's a distributed way of authenticating any transaction, for instance, a lot of government entities will not then have a reason of being. If you will be able to authenticate and store and then be able to retrieve any transaction, a real estate transaction, any even, and I loved moving from the real property to the intellectual property to the digital property. That will mean that within this digital space, you will be able in a decentralized manner, in a distributed manner, to be able to do whatever you need to do, what used to be done in a centralized manner. That's a fundamental disruption of the ecosystems, that's a fundamental disruption of the various stakeholders and players that you had around the ecosystem. How we are working, we have the immense privilege of being the partner of Smart Dubai in building the platform. We have a couple of use cases. One is in the healthcare, that we are in the healthcare domain, and some others that are being discussed that around the distributed architecture and using blockchain as a backbone for what we are doing.
That's really wonderful. So, one question that often comes to the mind of the public opinion as well as governments is decentralization good? Will it contribute to a better society? Do you think that it could be the case? And if yes, how are you seeing decentralization contributing to a better society already?
One has to acknowledge that with all these things that are happening, some people legitimately have questions around, is this at the end going to be something good? Let me step back a little bit and say, yes, people are wondering, not only people, but leaders are wondering, is AI and robotics? Are we moving from the phase where we moved from human to automated, you know, the industrial phase? If some of you remember this movie for Charles Chaplin, where, you know, all these workers where we were automating every task that we felt human can avoid doing. Then we moved to digital, then we added intelligence, and this is the era of smart. And what's next? And some people are saying, is the next phase going to be intelligent robots? And then immediately the question, and is this intelligent robot is going to replace me, is going to take my job? So these are legitimate questions. I have always been a techno-optimist because I've been in this kitchen and in these transformations since, you know, more than 3.5 decades. I know that doesn't make me look younger, but what do you want? That's the reality of things, is this one. So, and these are legitimate questions, but I always express an act of faith that humans have the intelligence to make this technology work for betterment of our lives, for better societies. I can give you a few examples, some of them close to you. Today, there are some pilots using blockchain in some relief for some situations in the world. The World Food Organization is using this to provide, using biometrics and in a distributed manner. There is a prototype for some Syrian refugee camps in Jordan in order to get some funds for these, using this in a much more secure, much more reliable, much less possibility of tampering or manipulating this. ConsenSys, you have these brilliant initiative that is happening with the Dubai Future Foundation of the 1 million Arab coders to build this using blockchain. So I think we are seeing bubbling some initiatives that can tell us that there are use cases that can make this really be something good for. But there are a lot of questions that are still unfound, unasked. And I very often say in my interventions, we need to move from the culture of the right answer to the culture of the right question, because in the world, in the ecosystems, we are moving from, at the time I started, it was what I call the unshared certainties. You know, in telcos, we had our certainties. We didn't need to share with anyone else. And we are moving from these unshared certainties to what I call the shared uncertainties. And that will mean that we have to act completely differently. We have to have a different culture. It is more and more about collaboration. Blockchain is by essence a distributed way, so that will force, blockchain is based on this, you know, collaborative model. So this is why I'm very strongly have the belief that this is going to be the future. And these questions will allow us to elaborate collectively answers that will have to be constantly revisited. As we are moving from one model, we moved from physical to digital, we are moving, and this morning I loved as well the modelization. We're moving from real property to intellectual property to digital property. We need to frame what these movements mean, to frame it and to find the right answers between multi-stakeholders to find. It's not easy. People don't like usually to share a lot and to come together to find. I can give you even, share with you a thought. I do believe with these trends that we are seeing, that some of the international organizations that have been built to find solutions for the global order and global rules order in the world, like WTO, World IMF, World Bank, at risk to become obsolete within the digital world that we are in when contemplating this, if they don't reinvent themselves Do they have an idea how they need to reinvent themselves? No. Do I have? Of course not. But they need to really rediscover, sit together and find out in the world that we are living, what are the rules, the new rules of engagement. I find this fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, speaking from the point of view of ConsenSys, I definitely echo your view that all those technology foundations can contribute to a better future. And after all, our company was really built with this vision that blockchain can enable fairer, frictionless commerce between everyone. We are definitely at the very beginning of this technology and how it will transform society. But there are two ways that we are seeing blockchain technology contribute to a better world. So one of those ways is that we're already seeing innovation being much more geographically distributed than it used to be in the past. And that's why we've decided to support the 1 Million Arab Coder initiative by sponsoring tutors and certifying 1,000 developers on blockchain technology. And that's also why we've sponsored the blockchain developer program in Lebanon, sponsoring refugees for access to this program. And it's not just because we felt that we needed to sponsor those programs, it's truly because we see blockchain innovation taking place everywhere in the world and we want to make that possible. And the second way that blockchain is already contributing to a better world is probably through payments and financial inclusion. In the Philippines, we are working with Union Bank to connect more than 100 regional banks with each other and lower the costs and increase the speed of remittances within the country. And this is already contributing
and increase visibility, lower risks of corruption, and increase the flow, the tracking and the flow, ensuring, for instance, for a lot of non-profit organizations that they can see where the funds are going and how they are going. A lot of benefits as well. We can elaborate for hours on that, absolutely.
Absolutely. So you've said it, you've been in the kitchen of this digital transformation for quite some time now. And so right now you're also making it happen within your company. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that one is encountering on that journey and how to address them?
Resistance for change is something very natural. Resistance for change is something, disruption is not built in our DNA. We don't like it. It puts us in an uncomfortable zone. I'll give you a small example. If I'm planning to have something done and I want to do it planned for the end of the month, and for some reason I need to finish it in a couple of days, tomorrow, I am in my uncomfort zone. I don't like it. All of us. So then what to say if it's really disrupting totally and forcing me to do things differently? In your organizations, you will have resistance for change. You will have very often people that will be embracing change, or sometimes people you brought to put this change in motion. And you will have people that will be always resisting, without malice, not for any bad agenda, but that's a natural thing. Leaders have to embrace, enforce, and understand how to explain, how to communicate. We need, if we are leading organizations, we need to tell the story. We need to tell the story from various angles, because the story that we are talking about today has, as I said, a lot of dimensions. It has a technological dimension, economical dimension, a human dimension, a whole societal dimension. We need to explain, we need to tell. This is the best way of accelerating this change. How do you do it? I always said it. You're stubborn on the vision, but you have to be flexible on the execution because you will be forced sometime to just readjust, but you have to be stubborn on the direction that you want to reach.
All right, so I think we've reached the end of our allotted slot. Just to recap, we are definitely at a digital turning point, and decentralization in many respects is one of the foundations of the shape of this new economy that we're all working towards. We all hope and are working towards this economy being fairer, more transparent, and leading to a better society. But it does not come without challenges. And you, as the CEO of EITC, are really leading an organization that is contributing to that future. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.